My 14-year-old son stood up to his dad's new wife at their wedding. I'll never forget the phone call. My commanding officer's voice was clipped, urgent. "You need to come home. Your son has been arrested. Felony assault at his father's wedding." That sentence knocked the air right out of me. I'd been deployed overseas for months, counting down the days until I could see my two boys again. And now I was being told my 14-year-old, the kid who once refused to squash bugs because he didn't want to kill someone's dad, had apparently beaten a woman unconscious in front of an entire wedding party. The woman wasn't just anyone either. She was his father's new wife. I flew back on emergency leave. 18 hours of pure dread swirling in my head. What kind of anger could drive my gentle son to explode like that? The thought of him locked in a cell, alone, was enough to make me shake through the entire flight. When I landed, I drove straight to my ex-husband's house. The driveway still bore the dark stains from where she'd fallen, and the sight made my stomach twist. I rang the bell, and Conrad, my ex, opened the door. His face was twisted with rage, eyes bloodshot. "We're pressing charges," he snapped before I could even say hello. Inside, the living room looked like a tribunal. His parents sat stiffly on the couch. His siblings lurked in corners, whispering. The bride herself, Lauren, was in the center. Face bandaged, nose splinted, swollen bruises already turning purple. She dabbed at her eyes, her sobs echoing like rehearsed background noise. And then there was my son. My boy, sitting perfectly straight, chin high, knuckles raw and split. Not crying, not cowering. He looked me dead in the eye as if to say, "I did this, and I don't regret it." "Your son destroyed our family," Conrad spat, pointing at the bruised bride. "Look at her face. He's an animal." Every eye in the room turned on me, waiting for me to condemn him. My heart hammered, but I forced my voice steady. "I'm not taking sides until I hear both of them." The room erupted with scoffs, mutters, accusations, but I ignored them and turned to my son. "Tell me what happened." He looked around slowly, taking in every face. Then, with a voice clear and cold enough to freeze the air, he said, "She's been hurting me for 6 months. That's why I did it." The room went silent. Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. And tell me what you think in the comments. I'll feature the best one in the next video. The silence after his words was heavier than any explosion. Then it came, like shrapnel tearing through the room. "Liar!" Lauren shrieked, her sobs cutting off like a switch. She clutched her bandaged face with trembling hands. "I've only ever tried to love him. He's twisting it, making me into some kind of monster." Her mother lunged forward, jabbing a finger at my son. "You evil little..." But she stopped when her husband gripped her arm. His face had gone pale, like he wasn't shocked, but tired, like he'd been waiting for this shoe to drop. My son didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and swiped to a hidden folder. "She told me 14-year-old boys always want it. Said I should be grateful." His voice cracked on that word. Grateful. But he shoved the screen toward me. What I saw made my stomach turn. Photos. Incriminating ones. The room erupted again. Conrad stumbled backward, hands shaking. These could be anything. Out of context." But his voice had no conviction. Lauren's face twisted, panic flashing for the first time. She lunged to grab the phone. "Those are private!" she screeched. Then she froze, realizing what she'd just admitted, and then my son turned his fury on the rest of them. "Dad, I told you months ago. You said she was just being affectionate. Grandpa, you laughed. Said I was a lucky boy. Aunt Fen told me not to be dramatic. Uncle Potter said I should be grateful. His voice cracked again, but now from rage, not fear. Every single one of you told me to shut up. The words landed like grenades. Conrad's father went from red to gray in seconds, staring at his grandson with something that looked a lot like guilt. Fen shifted uncomfortably in her chair, eyes darting anywhere but at the boy. Potter had his face buried in his hands. Lauren tried to rally. She stood, shaky but defiant. "You're just trying to ruin me. He's making this up to get attention." But my son's eyes glistened with hot tears as he whispered, "That's not why I hit her." The whole room froze. Even I felt my breath catch. "Then why?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He swallowed, turned toward the staircase, and said in a voice that was more broken than I'd ever heard, "Because last week I caught her sneaking out of Tommy's room." Tommy, my ex-husband's 9-year-old son. My blood ran cold. For a split second, nobody moved. The words just hung in the air like a live wire, sparking against everything we thought we knew. Conrad blinked, confused, his anger faltering. "What are you talking about?" His voice was sharp, but it wavered. My son's hands shook as he wiped his face. "The night before your wedding, 2 a.m, I saw her come out of Tommy's room. He was crying into his pillow. I begged you to listen, Dad. You said not today, not on the wedding week, but I knew. I knew if I didn't stop her, she'd never stop." Lauren's composure shattered. Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by raw fury. "That little brat came onto me!" she screamed. Conrad's head snapped toward her. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, dangerous. For the first time since I walked in, real fear flickered across Lauren's face. Before anyone could move, my son ran upstairs. My instinct screamed to follow him, but I forced myself to wait. Minutes later, he came back down carrying Tommy. The little boy was in pajamas, face buried against his brother's shoulder. Gently, my son set him down in front of everyone. His voice cracked. "Tell them, Tommy." The child didn't look up. He just nodded, trembling. Then, with hands too small for such a burden, he tugged up his pajama shorts. Bruises dotted the insides of his thighs. The room erupted. Lauren's mother screamed like she'd been stabbed. "You promised! You swore after our last time—" She slapped her hand over her mouth too late. "Last time!" I snapped, my voice like ice. "What do you mean, last time?" Her husband barked at her to shut up, but the damage was done. Conrad looked like his whole world had tilted sideways. He grabbed Lauren by the shoulders, shaking her. "Did you touch my son?" Lauren shoved him away, her face contorted with something ugly, something real. "You all knew what I was. You just didn't care until now." My son stood tall, despite the tears streaking down his face. "We're kids, and every adult in this room chose her over us." That broke me. I pulled out my phone and called 911 right there in front of them. My hands didn't even shake. Lauren bolted for the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind her. Nobody followed. We just listened to the sound of drawers opening, water running, something clattering to the floor. I didn't know it yet, but those 10 minutes she spent locked in that bathroom were the start of her next move, her insurance plan. When she finally emerged, eyes red but mask back on, police lights were already flashing outside. The knock at the door was sharp, final. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, scanning the chaos. Lauren instantly shifted gears, sobbing theatrically, clutching her bandaged face like she was the victim of a war crime. "He attacked me!" she wailed, pointing at my son. "He's violent! He's dangerous! You have to protect me!" The officers looked at him. This thin, trembling 14-year-old boy whose hands were still scraped raw. He didn't lower his eyes. He didn't flinch. He just said quietly, "I hit her because she wouldn't stop hurting us." That froze them for a second. They exchanged a glance, and one officer pulled out his notebook. Conrad opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. He just sank into a chair, staring at Lauren like he didn't even recognize her anymore. The officers asked me to step outside. My son clung to his little brother, refusing to let him go, until I promised I wasn't leaving them. Out in the cold night air, one officer explained the process. Lauren was being taken in for questioning. My son, too. Assault charges were still on the table, even if the context was complicated. Inside, chaos erupted again. Lauren screamed as they cuffed her, thrashing, swearing she was innocent. "They're framing me! That boy's a liar! His mother's behind this!" Her voice cracked into something wild, something almost feral. The officers hauled her out while her parents begged them to be gentle, as though she weren't fighting them like a wildcat. That should have been the end of it, or at least the start of justice. But when she locked herself in the bathroom earlier, she hadn't been crying or cleaning herself up. She'd been working, setting the trap. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a cramped interrogation room. A detective slid a manila folder across the table. "We pulled this off Lauren's phone. Care to explain?" Inside were screenshots of text messages between me and Lauren, messages I had never sent, messages that made me look complicit. "You can handle him however you see fit. I trust your judgment completely. Teenage boys need firm boundaries. Do what you have to do." My blood ran cold. The detective leaned back, watching me carefully. "So tell me, did you give her permission to discipline your son? Did you tell her she could use other methods?" I almost laughed, but the sound stuck in my throat. "Absolutely not. I never sent those messages." But even as I said it, my stomach dropped. She'd planned this. She'd always had a backup plan, and somehow she had just dragged me into her nightmare. Walking out of that interrogation room felt like walking off a cliff. My hands still smelled like ink from the fingerprinting, and the word accomplice echoed in my head like a siren. Lauren hadn't just tried to bury my son. She was trying to bury me with him. I drove straight to Casey Maple Grove's office, the lawyer my friend had insisted I call. Casey was sharp, no nonsense, the kind of woman who looked like she hadn't lost a fight in her life. She sat me down, listened to every word, and then started typing furiously. "She spoofed these texts," Casey said flatly. "There are apps that let you fake whole conversations. She had 10 minutes locked in that bathroom, more than enough time." Hearing it put fire back in my chest. Lauren might have been clever, but she wasn't invincible. Casey filed preservation orders that same day. Phone carriers, social media, cloud backups. If Lauren touched anything digital, Casey wanted it locked down before it could vanish. She told me to stop talking to police directly. From now on, they talk to me. She's trying to make you look complicit. Don't hand her ammunition. Meanwhile, CPS showed up at my friend Sarah's house where the boys and I were staying. A caseworker named Derek interviewed them separately. My son told him everything. Dates, places, the exact words Lauren had used when she told him nobody would believe him. Tommy sat on the edge of a chair, legs swinging nervously, and whispered about nights he wished he could forget. The bruises he showed Derek were photographed in silence. The caseworker's face stayed neutral, but his knuckles were white around his pen. By the time he left, both of the boys were under a strict safety plan, supervised contact only, all visits monitored. It felt humiliating, like I was being treated as a risk, but I agreed to every rule. I'd agree to anything if it meant keeping them safe. But Lauren wasn't done. The very next day, her lawyer filed for a restraining order against me. The paperwork painted me as the mastermind of a jealous ex-wife plot. According to them, I had coached my son to attack her in order to steal custody of Tommy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the papers in half and to shove them down her throat. Instead, I handed them to Casey, who smirked. This is desperation. She's not just defending herself, she's flailing. That's good for us. Still, I couldn't sleep that night. I kept picturing Lauren in that bathroom, planting evidence with steady hands while her face still dripped blood, planning 3 moves ahead while my son was upstairs shaking, and I swore to myself, if she wanted a war, then I'd make sure she choked on her own lies. When Corey Sedlan walked into Casey's conference room, he carried himself like a guy who'd already seen too many lies to be surprised by one more. He laid his laptop on the table, clicked through folders, and didn't sugarcoat a thing. She did exactly what I expected, he said, but she made mistakes. Amateur hour. I remember the way his words felt like oxygen. For 3 days I'd been breathing shallow, waiting for the next shoe to drop. The detective had been careful with me. The kids were getting trauma care. Casey was filing motion after motion. But none of that quieted the animal in my chest that kept expecting a new trap. Corey's calm made me believe we actually had a chance. He started with the obvious, the screenshots Lauren had shown the police. Corey zoomed in on fonts, timestamps, spacing, the little betrayals digital forgers forget. This isn't a carrier log, he said, pointing at the metadata. It's a picture she made. He highlighted creation timestamps that matched the 10 minutes she spent in that bathroom. She installed a spoofing app from a third-party store. It was hidden in a calculator folder. You don't just stumble across that by accident. Then he played the audio clip the detectives had flagged, supposedly my voice threatening to ruin her life. Corey turned up the volume and then slowed the file down layer by layer. Waves that shouldn't line up didn't. There were abrupt edits, unnatural breaths, a splice point where 2 different sources were glued together. AI tweaked, he said. Someone took bits of old recordings, pasted them in, and ran them through a voice model. It leaves fingerprints. As he walked me through each piece of evidence, a map of Lauren's construction formed. A stage meltdown, hidden apps, fabricated screenshots, an AI-stitched voice memo, then a coordinated social media smear she'd launched after bail. It was so clean I could taste it. Malice with a plan. We filed Corey's report with the prosecutor within 48 hours. It was technical, dense, and devastating. When the prosecutor called Casey, his voice had a new tone, less wary, more focused. We may be able to get the messages and audio suppressed, he said. This changes things. But proving the lies didn't stop the escalation. The moment her backup plan started to crumble, Lauren pushed harder. Overnight, anonymous accounts began showing up. My name, my son's photo, fabricated narratives stitched together with details only she would know. Threats landed in my friends' inboxes. Someone slashed the tires on Sarah's car. A package with fake evidence was left on our porch. The harassment smelled like the same hand that had set the first trap. Her lawyer pushed NDAs and hush money to Tommy's social worker like offers on an auction block. Conrad's parents begged us to settle quietly to save the family, while their other emails betrayed panic. My command sent a formal letter. My security clearance was under administrative review, pending the investigation. 15 years of service felt like a ledger that could be erased on someone else's lie. At night I woke hearing the echo of my son's voice saying, "If I hadn't hit her, she would have kept going." Those words steeled me. Corey's report was the first real weapon we had. It didn't end the nightmare, but it gave me a sliver of leverage. and leverage I decided in that sleepless hour was something I would use. When the court date for the suppression hearing finally arrived, I thought I was ready. Casey had walked me through every scenario. Corey had prepared a technical breakdown that could make a jury full of grandparents understand metadata, and I'd promised myself I wouldn't let Lauren see me shake. But when she walked into that courtroom, she wasn't the bloodied bride from the wedding or the feral woman screaming in handcuffs. She was dressed like a victim. Soft cardigan, hair pulled back, hands folded sweetly in her lap. She touched her fading bruises like she was rehearsing sympathy. And for a terrifying second, I remembered how easily she had fooled everyone before. The judge listened while her new lawyer argued that the screenshots were real, that the audio was genuine, that my son and I had cooked up an elaborate story to destroy her. Then Corey took the stand. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need to be. He spoke plain, steady, pointing to blown-up images of timestamps and mismatched fonts. He explained the AI splice in the audio, playing the unnatural breath over the courtroom speakers, until even the judge leaned forward, frowning. He showed the hidden app logs installed at the exact moment she'd locked herself in the bathroom. By the time he finished, Lauren's lawyer was stumbling over his notes, trying to come up with anything that didn't sound like denial. Lauren herself sat stiff, hands clenched in her lap, her mask slipping at the edges. The judge didn't rule immediately, but I saw it in his face. He knew. Everyone in that room knew. Still, victory wasn't clean, because while the evidence was unraveling, Lauren was unraveling with it, and dragging us with her. The online harassment hit a new fever pitch that same week, accounts spitting venom under my son's school photos, posts about me being a traitor mom. My friend Sarah's house, our safe place, was egged in the middle of the night. One morning we woke up to see the words liar spray painted across her garage door. Tommy sobbed so hard he made himself sick when he saw it. Conrad showed up 2 days later, pounding on the door so hard it cracked the frame. He screamed that Tommy was his son, that the safety plan was illegal, that I was poisoning the kids against him. Sarah called the police while I filmed from the window, my voice whispering over the recording. This is what he does when he thinks nobody's watching. The officers made him leave, but the fear stayed. Every time headlights slowed outside, Tommy hid in the closet. My son lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. I was living on coffee and adrenaline, waiting for the next blow. And then came a letter from Lauren's family's lawyer, a settlement proposal. NDA clauses so strict my boys wouldn't even be allowed to talk about what happened in therapy. In exchange, a payout. First 50,000, then 100, then 2. Casey shoved the papers back across the table. My clients want justice, not money. It was the first time I saw a real panic in the other lawyer's eyes. Lauren was cornered, and cornered people either break or they bite. The day the prosecutor called me into her office, I thought it was going to be another round of stalling. More "we'll see." More delay tactics from Lauren's side. But when I sat down, she slid a folder across the desk. Inside were therapy records, Lauren's records, sealed files, now unsealed by the court. 3 other children, 3 different towns, different years, all telling eerily similar stories. Incidents brushed off by therapists, shuffled under the rug by family moves. She hadn't just hurt my boys, she had a trail. The prosecutor's voice was steady but not sharp. With this, we're adding charges. No plea deals. We're going to trial. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like the ground was solid under my feet. Lauren showed up at the next hearing looking less polished. The soft cardigan was gone. She was jittery, biting her lip, whispering furiously to her lawyer. When the judge mentioned her prior therapy records, her composure cracked. She slammed her hand on the table, shouting that it was all lies, that everyone was conspiring against her. The judge had to bang his gavel to quiet her. It was the mask slipping for good. Meanwhile, my son was working through his diversion program. Twice a week therapy. Hours at the animal shelter, walking dogs that adored him instantly, cleaning kennels with quiet determination. The staff said he was one of the kindest kids they'd ever had. And Tommy, he was still fragile, still waking up from nightmares, but he laughed again sometimes. Real laughter, the kind that lit up his whole face. Conrad, to his credit, finally started showing up to court-ordered parenting classes. Reports from his therapist admitted he'd ignored warning signs, that he brushed off his son's pain. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was at least acknowledgement. His family fractured. Fenn sent an apology letter. Potter mailed gift cards. His parents went silent. None of that mattered. What mattered was the boys were believed now. The military never gave me my promotion. My career was effectively over, stamped with a reprimand that would follow me to retirement. 15 years gone in a blink. But I looked at my kids and knew I had made the right trade. Lauren's family tried one last stunt, another NDA threat, another desperate attempt to shut us up. Casey laughed in their faces. Your daughter's going to prison. Save your breath. And when the verdict finally came months later, guilty on multiple counts, I didn't cheer. I didn't feel triumph. I just sat there holding my boy's hands, letting the silence wash over me. My son squeezed my palm hard. She can't hurt us anymore. That was enough. I walked out of that courthouse into the sunlight, both boys on either side of me, and for the first time in nearly a year, I let myself breathe. The system hadn't been quick. It hadn't been kind. But it had worked. And my son, the same boy who once wouldn't even kill a bug, had been brave enough to stop a monster when none of the adults would. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.